Hare Krishna. So today we will be reading from chapter 29 of Krishna book, chapter entitled The Rasa Dance Introduction. Let us begin with the prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishna Vajra Shivate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauri Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. This is a long chapter. If possible, we'll cover it in two readings. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the Rasa dance took place on the full moon night of the Sharad season. From the statements of previous chapter, it appears that the festival of Govardhan Puja was performed just after the dark moon night of the month of Kartika, and thereafter the ceremony of Ratra Dvitiya was performed. Then the wrath of Indra was exhibited in the shape of torrents of rains and hailstorms, and Lord Krishna held up Govardhan hill for 7 days until the ninth day of moon. Thereafter, on the 10th day, the inhabitants of Vrindavan were talking amongst themselves about the wonderful activities of Krishna, and the next day Ekadashi was observed by Nanda Maharaj. On the next day, Dev Dwadashi, Nanda Maharaj went to take a bath in the Ganges and was arrested by one of the men of Varun. Then he was released by Lord Krishna. The Nanda Maharaj, along with the cowherd men, was shown the spiritual sky. In this way, the full moon night of the Sharad season came to an end. The full moon night of Ashwin is called Sharad Purnima. Ashwin is called Sharad Purnima. It appears from the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna had to wait another year for such a moon before enjoying the Rasa dance with the gopis. At the age of 7 years, he lifted Govardhan hill. Therefore, the Rasa dance took place during his 8th year. From the Vedic literature, it appears that when a theatrical actor dances among many dancing girls, the group dance is called a Rasa dance. When Krishna saw the full moon night of the Sharad season decorated with various seasonal flowers, especially the Mallika flowers, which are very fragrant, he remembered the gopis' prayers to goddess Katyayani, wherein they prayed for Krishna to be their husband. He thought that the full moon night of the Sharad season was just suitable for a nice dance, so their desire to have Krishna as their husband would then be fulfilled. The words used in this connection in Srimad Bhagavatam are Bhagavan Api. This means that although Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead and thus has no desire that needs to be fulfilled, because he is always full with six opulences, he still wanted to enjoy the company of the gopis in the Rasa dance. Bhagavan Api signifies that this dance is not like the ordinary dancing of young boys and girls. The specific words used in Srimad Bhagavatam are Yoga Mayam Upashritaka, which in Srimad Bhagavatam are which means that this dancing with the gopis is on the platform of Yoga Maya, not Mahamaya. The dancing of young boys and girls within the material world is in the kingdom of Mahamaya, or the external energy. The Rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis is on the platform of Yoga Maya. The difference between the platforms of Yoga Maya and Mahamaya is compared in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to the difference between gold and iron. From the viewpoint of metallurgy, gold and iron are both metals, but the quality is completely different. Similarly, although the Rasa dance and Lord Krishna's association with the gopis appear like the ordinary mixing of young boys and girls, the quality is completely different. The difference is appreciated by great Vaishnavas because they can understand the difference between love of Krishna and lust. On the Mahamaya platform, dances take place on the basis of sense gratification. But when Krishna called the gopis by sounding his flute, they very hurriedly rushed towards the spot of the Rasa dance with the transcendental desire to satisfy Krishna. The author of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, has explained that lust means sense gratification and love also means sense gratification, but for Krishna. In other words, when activities are enacted on the platform of personal sense gratification, they are called material activities. But when they are enacted for the satisfaction of Krishna, they are spiritual activities. On any platform of activities, the principle of sense gratification is there. But on the spiritual platform, sense gratification is for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, whereas on the material platform, it is for the performer. For example, on the material platform, when a servant sees a master, he is trying to satisfy not the senses of his master, but rather his own senses. The servant would not serve the master if the payment stopped. That means that the servant engages himself in the service of the master just to satisfy his own senses. On the spiritual platform, however, the servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead serves Krishna without payment and he continues to his service in all conditions. That is the difference between Krishna consciousness and material consciousness. As mentioned above, it appears that Krishna enjoyed the Rasa dance with the gopis when he was 8 years old. At that time, many of the gopis were married because in India, especially in those days, girls were married at very early age. There are even many instances of girls giving birth to a child at the age of 12. Under the circumstances, all the gopis who wanted to have Krishna as their husband were already married. At the same time, they continued to hope that Krishna would be their husband. Their attitude towards Krishna was that of paramour love. Therefore, the loving affairs of Krishna and the gopis are called Parakiya Ras. The attitude of a married man who desires another wife or a wife who desires another husband is called Parakiya Ras. Actually, Krishna is the husband of everyone because he is the supreme enjoyer. The gopis wanted Krishna to be their husband, but factually there was no possibility of his marrying all the gopis. But because they had the natural tendency to accept Krishna as their supreme husband, the relationship between the gopis and Krishna is called Parakiya Ras. The Parakiya Ras is ever existent in Golok Vrindavan, in the spiritual sky, where there is no possibility of the inebriety which characterizes Parakiya Ras in the material world. In the material world, Parakiya Ras is abominable, whereas in the spiritual world, it is present in the super excellent relationship of Krishna and the gopis. There are many relationships with Krishna: master and servant, friend, parent and son, and lover and beloved. Out of all these rasas, the Parakiya Ras is considered to be the topmost. The material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. It is just like the reflection of a tree on the bank of a reservoir of water. The topmost part of the tree is seen as the lowest part. Similarly, Parakiya Ras, when pervertedly reflected in this material world, is most abominable. Therefore, when people imitate the rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis, they simply enjoy the perverted, abominable reflection of the transcendental Parakiya Ras. There is no possibility of enjoying this transcendental Parakiya Rasa within the material world. It is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam that one should not imitate his Parakiya Ras even in dream or imagination. Those who do so drink the most deadly poison. When Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, desired to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night of the Sharad season. Exactly at that very moment, the moon, the lord of the stars, appeared in the sky, displaying its most beautiful features. The full moon night of the Sharad season is the most beautiful night in the year. In this Indian city of Agra, in Uttar Pradesh province, there is a great monument called the Taj Mahal, which is a tomb made of first class marble stone. During the night of the full moon of the Sharad season, many foreigners go to see the beautiful reflections of the moon on the tomb. Thus, this full moon night is celebrated even today for its beauty. When the full moon rose in the east, it tinged everything with a reddish color. With the rising of the moon, the whole sky appeared smeared by red kumkum. When a husband long separated from his wife returns home, he decorates the face of his wife with red kumkum. This long expected moonrise of the Sharad season was thus smearing the eastern sky. The appearance of the moon increased Krishna's desire to dance with the gopis. The forests were filled with fragrant flowers. The atmosphere was cooling and festive. When Lord Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis of all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times due to the rising full moon. The red horizon, the calm and cool atmosphere, and the blossoming flowers, all the gopis were by nature very much attracted to Krishna's beauty. And when they heard the vibration of his flute, they became apparently lustful to satisfy the senses of Krishna. Immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, they all left their respective engagements and proceeded to the spot where Krishna was standing. While they ran very swiftly, their earrings swung back and forth. They all rushed toward the place known as Vamshivata. Some of them were engaged in milking cows, but they left their milking business half finished and immediately went to Krishna. One of them had just collected milk and put it in a milk pan on the stove to boil, but she did not care whether the milk overboiled or spilled. She immediately left to go see Krishna. Some of them were breastfeeding their small babies, and some were engaged in distributing food to the members of their families. But they all left all such engagements and immediately rushed toward the spot where Krishna was playing his flute. Some were engaged in serving their husbands, and some were themselves engaged in eating, but caring neither to serve their husbands nor eat. They immediately left. Some of them wanted to decorate their faces with ointments, cosmetic decorations, or put on their clothes in the right way because of their anxiety to meet Krishna immediately. Their faces were decorated hurriedly and were haphazardly finished. Some even put the lower part of their clothes on the upper part of their bodies and the upper part on the lower part. While all the gopis were hurriedly leaving their respective places, their husbands, brothers, and fathers were all struck with wonder to know where they were going. Being young girls, they were protected either by husbands, elder brothers, or fathers. All their guardians forbade them to go to Krishna, but they disregarded them. When a person becomes attracted by Krishna and is in full Krishna consciousness, he does not care for any worldly duties, even though very urgent. Krishna consciousness is so powerful that it gives everyone relief from all material activities. Srila Rupa Goswami has written a very nice verse wherein one gopi advises another. My dear friend, if you desire to enjoy the company of material society, friendship, and love, then please do not go to see that smiling boy Govinda who is standing on the bank of the Yamuna and playing his flute, his lips brightened by the beams of the full moonlight. Srila Rupa Goswami indirectly instructs that one who has been captivated by beautiful smiling face of Krishna has lost all attraction for material enjoyments. This is the test of advancement in Krishna consciousness. A person advancing in Krishna consciousness must lose interest in material activities and personal sense gratification. Some of the gopis were factually detained from going to Krishna by their husbands and were locked up by force within their rooms. Being unable to go to Krishna, they began to meditate upon his transcendental form by closing their eyes. They already had the form of Krishna within their minds. They proved to be the greatest yogis. As in stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a person who is constantly thinking of Krishna within his heart with faith and love is considered to be the topmost of all yogis. Actually, a yogi concentrates his mind on the form of Lord Vishnu. That is real yoga. Krishna is the original form of all Vishnu Tattvas. The gopis who could not go to Krishna personally began to meditate upon him as perfect yogis. In the conditioned stage of the living entities, there are two kinds of results of fruitive activities. The conditioned living entity who is constantly engaged in sinful activities has suffering as his result, and he who is engaged in pious activities has material enjoyment as a result. In either case, material suffering or material enjoyment, the sufferer or enjoyer is conditioned by material nature. The gopis, associates of Krishna, were assembled in the place where from no, were the gopis, associates of Krishna, who assembled in the place where Krishna was appearing, were from different groups. Most of the gopis were eternal companions of Krishna, as stated in the Brahman Samhita, Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabhi. In the spiritual world, the associates of Krishna, especially the gopis, are manifestations of the pleasure potency of Lord Krishna. They are expansions of Srimati Radharani, but when Krishna exhibits his transcendental pastimes within the material world in some of the universes, not only the eternal associates of Krishna come, but also those who are being promoted to that status from this material world. So some of the gopis who joined Krishna's pastimes within this material world were coming from the status of ordinary human beings. If they had been bound by fruitive action, they were freed them from all sinful reactions, and their ecstasy of transcendental love for Krishna in his absence ended all their reactions to material pious activities. The conditioned soul is subjected to birth and death either by pious or sinful activities. But the gopis who began to meditate on Krishna's transcended both positions and became purified and thus elevated to the status of the gopis already expanded by his pleasure potency. All the gopis who concentrated their minds on Krishna in the spirit of paramore love became fully purified of all the fruitive reactions of material love. And some of them immediately gave up their material bodies developed under the three modes of material nature. Maharaj Parikshit heard Shukdev Goswami explain the situation of the gopis who assembled with Krishna in the Rasa dance. When he heard that some of the gopis, simply by concentrating on Krishna as their paramour, became freed from all contamination of material birth and death, he said, the gopis did not know that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. They accepted him as the beautiful boy and considered him to be their paramour. So, how was it possible for them to get freed from the material condition just by thinking of a paramour? One should consider here that Krishna and ordinary living beings are qualitatively one. The ordinary living beings, being part and parcel of Krishna, are also Brahman, but Krishna is the supreme, Para-Brahman. The question is, if it is possible for a devotee to get free from the material contaminated stage by simply by thinking of Krishna, then why should this not be possible for others who are also thinking of someone? If one is thinking of a husband or a son, or if anyone at all is thinking of other living entity, then since all living entities are also Brahman, why are all those who does think of others not freed from the contaminated stage of material nature? This is a very intelligent question because there are always atheists imitating Krishna. In these days of Kali Yuga, there are many rascals who think themselves to be as good as Krishna and who cheat people into believing that Thinking of them is as good as thinking of Lord Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj, apprehending the future dangerous condition of blind followers of demoniac imitators, therefore asked this question, and unfortunately, it is recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam to warn innocent people that thinking of an ordinary man and thinking of Krishna are not the same. Actually, even thinking of the demigods cannot compare with thinking of Krishna. It is warned in the Vaishnava Tantra that one who puts Vishnu, Narayan, or Krishna on the same level as the demigods is called a Pashandi or rascal. On hearing this question from Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami replied, "My dear king, your question is already answered, even before this incident." Because Parikshit Maharaj wanted to clear up the situation, his spiritual master answered him very intelligently. "Why are you again asking about the same subject matter which has already been explained to you? Why are you so forgetful?" A spiritual master is always in superior position, so he has the right to chastise his disciple in this way. Shukdev Goswami knew that Maharaj Parikshit asked the question not for his own understanding, but as a warning to the future innocent people who might think others to be equal to Krishna. Shukdev Goswami then reminded Parikshit Maharaj about the salvation of Shishupal. Shishupal was always envious of Krishna, and because of his envy, Krishna killed him. But since Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, Shishupal gained salvation simply by seeing him. If an envious person can get salvation simply by concentrating his mind on Krishna, then what to speak of the gopis who are so dear to Krishna and always think of him in love? There must be some difference between the enemies and the friends. If Krishna's enemies could get freed from material contamination and become one with the Supreme, then certainly his dear friends like gopis can achieve such freedom and much more. Besides that, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is called Rishikesh. Shukdev Goswami also said that Krishna is Rishikesh, the Supreme Soul, whereas an ordinary man is conditioned soul covered by the material body. Krishna also Krishna and Krishna's body are the same because he is Rishikesh. Any person making a distinction between Krishna and Krishna's body is fool number one. Krishna is Rishikesh and Adhokshaj. These two particular words have been used by Shukdev Goswami in this instance. Rishikesh is the super soul and Adhokshaj is the supreme personality of Godhead, transcendental to the material nature. Just to show favor to the ordinary living entities, out of his causeless mercy, he appears as he is. Unfortunately, foolish persons mistake him to be an ordinary person and so they become eligible to go to hell. Shukdev Goswami continued to inform Maharaj Parikshit that Krishna is not an ordinary person but rather the supreme personality of Godhead, imperishable, immeasurable, and without any material qualities but full of all spiritual qualities. He appears in this material world out of his causeless mercy, and whenever he appears as he is, without change. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says that He appears by His spiritual potency. He does not appear under the control of their material potency. The material potency is under His control. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that the material potency is working under His superintendence. It is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that the material potency known as Durga is acting just like a shadow, which moves within the movement of the substance. The conclusion is that if somehow or other becomes attached to Krishna or attracted to him either because of his qualities or beauty or opulence, fame, strength, renunciation or knowledge, through affection or friendship, or even through lust, anger or fear, then one's salvation and freedom from material contamination are assured. In the Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, the Lord states that one who is engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness is very dear to him. A preacher has to face many difficulties in this struggle to preach pure Krishna consciousness. Sometimes he has to suffer bodily injuries, and sometimes he has to meet death also. All this is taken as a great austerity on behalf of Krishna. Krishna, therefore, has said that such a preacher is very, very dear to him. If Krishna's enemies can expect salvation simply by concentrating their minds on him, then what to speak of persons who are so dear to Krishna? The conclusion should be that the salvation of those who are engaged in preaching Krishna consciousness in the world is guaranteed in all circumstances. But such preachers never care for salvation because the factually one who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, devotional service has already achieved salvation. Shukdev Goswami therefore assured King Parikshit that he should always rest assured that one who is attracted by Krishna attains liberation from material bondage because Krishna is the transcendental master of all mystic power. Hare Krishna. So today we'll end here. Tomorrow we'll continue the same chapter. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai.